But what we've found is that if we can become that resource for folks where they are engaging and they're commenting, they're tagging their friends, they're sharing it in their stories, that's really like the golden ticket to bring them in.
Welcome back to Content in the Kitchen, where we gather around and chat about all things content marketing. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of social media and content strategy with Carolyn Cohen, who's currently the Senior Marketing Manager at H&R Block. Carolyn has a fantastic background, having worked with advertising agencies and big brands like Garvin. Now at H&R Block, she brings all of these experiences together to create impactful digital marketing strategies and work with cross-functional teams. She's worked with such a wide range of clients like Eurostar, Blue Bunny Ice Cream, Spirit Airlines, Sunny D, and tons more. Today, she's here to share her insights on creating and managing content calendars. So grab your favorite cup and let's dive into the conversation with Carolyn Cohen. All right, let's kick things off. When you're not at your desk and you find yourself in the kitchen, what's your go-to dish to cook?
I would like to call myself a little bit of a baking aficionado, and I have a cookie recipe that I actually discovered during COVID when there was actually like a flour shortage, egg shortage, that it's eggless chocolate chip cookie recipe, but it's shockingly amazing, and it's ready in 15 minutes. Always perfect, so highly recommend.
Wow, okay, I have so many questions just on this alone. So eggless. Is it still rising and chewy and gooey, or what kind of texture?
Yes, I would say it's definitely chewy, but they're really big cookies. It's a fork cookie.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Yes.
Now I'm the full visual. Definitely need some ice cream on top.
But it's great. I pre-prepared the dry ingredients and left them in little Ziplocs, like portioned out for 4 cookies or something. And so I could just whip up 4 in no time at all because I already had it prepped. So that was a smart move I need to replicate.
Yeah, very smart move, because otherwise you have 24 cookies and you're going to eat 24 cookies over a couple days.
I'm not bringing them to the office, so I need to control the amount of cookies I have in the house.
Yes, smart. Going from cookies to content calendars. So a big part of your current role is creating content calendars. Could you walk us through what your process for creating content calendars at H&R Block looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a little bit unique in how we build our content out in terms of timing. So not surprising to most, we're a seasonal brand. We have 3-4 months of the year that are really heavy. Consumer focus, media buy, content, as you might imagine, messaging, everything. However, that said, our social media and our content is year round. So we ebb and flow with the business to match whatever our objectives are. One thing we learned, though, is that the sort of traditional, whether it's a week or a month content calendar, didn't really fit our business style because in those, I think it's 105 days of tax season starting January 1st, we have to pivot so often that it was really hard to plan further than just a few days, honestly. So we got in a habit of establishing like a stock and flow, if you will, where we have some set content that we develop, sometimes at a quarterly level. Things we know are going to happen, messages we know we want to get out. We'll develop those, go through the whole legal review, have them ready to rock. Then we are constantly adding in new messages. Those could be new because of business-related pivots. It could also be new because of a content trend or a new style or a new feature that one of our favorite platforms left to just sprinkle in the middle of our work. And we want to take advantage of a new poll type. But we don't have that in our big quarterly plan. We don't want to wait and not be able to test that out. So we are merging those 2 buckets of content to build out what our week looks like. That definitely has some pros and cons, that if somebody asks me today what's going out next Thursday, I don't have that answer today, but I have all of the content that's going to go into that, and we're also able to just make those decisions. And I think, unfortunately, in the state of the world, there's so much going on all the time where we're like, hey, today we're going to pause posting, or today we need to put out a net new message that we weren't planning on. So we're really fluid with it, which I think is surprising to some, just given maybe the style of our business model. But it's worked honestly better than I expected it to. I was very surprised when I came into the role and I was like, where's the calendar? And they're like, well, or like we manage it in a funky way.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Does that almost make it more stressful because you have to be so on the fly and, okay, we need to create this piece of content now? Or is it actually the opposite and a little bit of a breath of fresh air because you can be so flexible?
I think it's a bit more of the latter, where I feel comforted knowing that we always are going to have some content that's ready to go. And that there's also going to be a pipeline of new content that we're going to be sprinkling in. And we have weeks where it feels a little bit where we're just putting out our regular planned content for 3 or 4 days straight. And then other days where it feels like everything is brand new. It does keep us on our toes in terms of approval flows because we're never really done, right? There's no, okay, April's approved. We get 3 weeks break and then we're going to kick off the next month. So we're always reviewing and approving something.
That makes sense. What does that approval process look like? Do you have a large team size? Does it go to a different department? How far in advance, especially with content that's a couple days away, how fast can you get it approved? I'd imagine that alone is like its own stress.
Totally. Yeah, I think for us, the approval process, it doesn't typically go too far outside of our team. It stays really within our social team. And then we've developed a tiering system for our work with some very specific thresholds of who sees what, because we have an incredible CMO, great VP, great leadership, and they love to be involved and they love to see what we're working on, right? That's one of the most exciting parts about working in marketing is seeing the work. But if we had our CMO reviewing every single piece of social content, we would never be able to get anything out the door. So those thresholds allow most of the work we do in social to stay in our lowest tier, where often I'm working with kind of a creative strategist who's a peer to me. Really, her role is looking at it from a full brand POV. Does this align with our messaging? Is this targeting our audiences? Is there anything in here that feels off or that we would never want to put out? And then we do run through legal as well. We have a great relationship with our legal team. For a subset of our work, we work with a bank partner, so that adds an additional several people in the mix, but we've gotten to a pretty good flow with that as well. I have found there's certainly no defined policy for this, but I have a few people I use as a gut check. And people that are a little bit removed from social, a little bit removed from the extremely online internet culture, that I might flag something to say, does this make any sense to you? Or if you had no context, is this inappropriate or something like that? Because I think the nature of TikTok and a lot of the channels, there's content that is so niche and so specific. And we love that. We love to play into it. But I also have to know at the end of the day, a lot of consumers might see it that maybe that's not on their For You page. They're not seeing that trend. So I've got a little committee that I use for those like, hey, just go or no go on this, right? Just make sure we're not going too far off the rails. But I'm definitely lucky to have leadership that empowers our decision-making and empowers our guardrails that we've worked on together so that we have more freedom throughout the process.
That's fantastic. I absolutely love that you have a group of people that you can go to that's separated from this, that you can get outside opinions to. I'm always trying to preach, especially with content, like it's so important to sleep on it and get a fresh pair of eyes. But if you have colleagues like outside of your internal departments, but friends, families that you can like bucket into a colleague basket to be like, hey, if I publish this, do you know what I'm saying? Especially with tax is technical. It's very technical. It's very complicated. And so we can understand our messaging really well, but it's so easy to forget that, oh, is a user going to understand this at all? Is someone outside of the tax realm that's in this messaging every single day going to get the point that we're trying to make?
Exactly.
Yeah, it can definitely be challenging. Engagement is always really big. What kind of KPIs are you tracking the most?
Yeah. Generally, we are focused pretty intensely on engagement, and I would say engagement, positive sentiment, and then impressions. And I'm speaking specifically to our organic content. When we're
Okay.
checking into paid social, of course, we're going to be talking about traffic conversion, a little bit more hard hitting KPIs. But what we've found is that if we can become that resource for folks where they are engaging and they're commenting, they're tagging their friends, they're sharing it in their stories, that's really like the golden ticket to bring them in. No one wants to follow a brand that's just brand message, promo, brand message, back to back. If we can share something educational, entertaining, useful, something they want to tag their dad in because we're making a joke about dads helping with their taxes, then in 2 months, when we do have something that maybe is a little more product driven, they're more likely to see it in their feed because they've engaged with us previously, but they're actually also in a better state to consider us as part of their consideration set.
That makes a lot of sense. So then are you primarily tracking like on a week-to-week basis, or how often are you going back and measuring? Like how much time do you need? Because you do have established audiences, so you'll get data a lot faster than, say, a brand that's brand new.
Sure. During tax season, we are looking honestly weekly, if not even tighter than that on some areas that have just a few day kind of window to be relevant. Outside of that, absolutely looking monthly. And then we also do quarterly reviews of every KPI top to bottom just to ensure we're tracking appropriately. But those weekly pivots really help us during tax season to be able to say, hey, we tried this. It wasn't a huge lift. It didn't really do much. Let's make sure we try something else next time. So it can be a bit overwhelming when we start talking about volume during that short window of the year, large volume, both organic and in paid social. And in all the other areas, we have content going out as well. But that's what we need to get the data to understand what's working and then optimize.
Yeah, definitely. How connected are you with those other organic channels? Are you putting in 10% of our content calendar needs to be specifically to drive traffic to a new piece of content on the site or to an opt-in form? Like, where do you factor in engagement versus specifically like traffic from organic social?
Sure. We, this past year, have stood up a content center of excellence that I lead, and that essentially has one representative from each group. So we've got email, we've got .com, we've got our blog. Really all of the relevant consumer channels are represented in that meeting. And the goal there is really to create efficiencies, because if we're creating content in an email about the child tax credit, we're probably also making blog content. We're probably also making a video for social. We're probably also making an SMS campaign. And so ensuring that we're being as efficient as we can, but also letting each other know, hey, I'm working on this. Could you use this? Or could this be beneficial? How do we like double dip in a lot of our areas? Because while we all sit under the same umbrella as any big company, there are silos, whether you want them to be there or not. And it would be easy to just say, email's over here, they work on their stuff. .com's over here, they work on their stuff. But we have found when we do talk, our messaging is more consistent and we're able to squeeze more out of it.
Yeah, I found that like when the last team that I was on, weekly meetings were huge. And it was just a 30-minute all hands on deck of this is what I'm promoting and someone from every department, this is what we're focusing on. So then we could mirror it, and it would give, from a content perspective, it would give me so many ideas of, oh, sales is focusing on this right now. We can totally create some sales enablement content to complement that. And it always shocks me when I hear different stakeholders not communicating with each other and everyone's working on individual projects. Of course, everyone's busy, but it's so important with content to everyone be on the same page. Like you said, with messaging alone, it all needs to tie together.
Right. Yeah, I specifically remember, this was a while ago, like maybe even 4 years ago, being in a meeting and hearing someone in another department say they were wrapping up a messaging campaign because it's no longer relevant. And I thought to myself, well, I have something planned to go out with that message next week. So like we were so not communicating on the right cadence for certain messages. And I was like, okay, that's a big unlock of this is a way we need to work better together.
Yes.
It's going to improve the consumer experience because a lot of those people are getting the same message from us in different mediums, and we don't want to be confusing our own audiences.
100%. You see something on social, and if you can click on it, if you're on the platform to where you can click on it, or if you go to the bio to click, whatever that action looks like, and then you land on a page or a site that has completely different messaging, that's where you're having the pogo stick effect, and they're going to bounce right off and go right back to their comfortable social media platform and just ignore that. It's not going to resonate with them at all, and it's a complete missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious how you go through, like, content calendars are really complex, and it sounds like as fast as you have to change yours or be ready to add new content, this would be a step that would be even more difficult to add to the puzzle. But how do you go through a content calendar and edit it? Make sure that everything's error-free, the specific requirements for each platform are met. What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. We, just like any social team, it's like that fear-inducing, no one wants to publish something with a typo or on the wrong channel or any of that. So we definitely have a few safeguards in place that help us prevent that from happening. But broadly speaking, I would say it's just having multiple eyes and not leaving it to one person to be the sole owner of A to Z with that piece of content. It is going to be seen by multiple folks. It is going to be reviewed by multiple folks. And then before it goes out, it's going to get a secondary check again. So it's definitely a good question because it's a common problem, unfortunately. I think we've all probably, I know I have, way back when, been the victim of even just a simple copy-paste, weird spacing. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not in one of these crisis situations where you're posting something that you thought was on your personal account, on the brand account. But still, that room for error is there and it's real. Yeah. And part of what comes with publishing content, but anything we can do to help prevent that or lower that risk, we try and do.
Has your skin gotten a bit thicker through being in this environment and getting the feedback of, oh, why did you say this? Or, oh, this is spelt wrong. Even though you read it 1,000 times, you did Grammarly, like it just happens from a human perspective.
Yes, definitely skin has gotten thicker. And I think my just worldview of not to say how much it matters, but hey, something happened. We caught it within 2 minutes. We have fixed it. All is well. People make the comment like, it's PR, not the ER. There's not as catchy of a phrase for content marketing. I like that one.
I like that. I really like that.
Yeah, you do have to sometimes level with yourself and be like, it's okay. I have a horror story from several jobs ago where in an internal document, mapping out some content, this was a brand that their competitor's name was like a Kleenex situation where people often say Kleenex when they mean tissue.
Yep.
I made that mistake in this internal document. It would have been very easy for the client to just say, hey, edit this.
Yeah,
but it
totally.
didn't do a big, if you made this mistake, what other mistakes?
Oh, no.
No, you must not understand our brand, or you must not have attention to detail. And it was like, okay, let's take a breath here.
Yep.
All will be well. And that's also part of being early in career is just understanding, okay, that's also a little bit of like knowing personalities and knowing who you're working with and making sure that everything is appropriate for the right recipient.
Yeah, that's a really great point because mistakes are going to happen no matter what. No matter you're in the social seat, the SEO seat, the design seat, like it's bound to happen. Even with AI, there's 1,000 mistakes happening, if not even more now. And so it's that level of how bad was the mistake? What does our PR move need to be, if at all? Or is it as easy as literally just going in and editing the copy real quick? And like you said, like 2 minutes. Okay, that's not that big of a deal. Sure, eyes may have seen it, but it's not like heartbreaking. At least now they know that there is a real human behind this and there was like a slight error. But have you ever had an issue to where it was like a big PR mishap to where you had to come out and publish like a, hey, we didn't mean that? Or
not as a result of content necessarily, but I'd be remiss to say we have not had customer service or scenario where we're having like a response from the brand that we've had to put out. And talk about stress. Obviously, those scenarios are inherently stressful.
Yes.
And it is always, though, a good show of the all hands on deck and figuring out who the right people are in the room and when to bring them in. Again, lucky to have a very well-oiled external PR team and comms leads that we work with, as well as legal and other entities that we're working with whenever there is the light, we need to put a statement out.
Yes.
Let's get the core group together.
Is there usually, do you have a quote unquote, like a PR policy on how fast a response time needs to be? Even looking at this from an angle of people commenting on content and having negative sentiment, like how do you address that and how fast do you try to address it?
Yeah, so my team works very closely with our customer service organization, and they have agents dedicated to social media. And they actually use the same tool that our team uses for publishing. So that helps certainly because we're all in the same tool environment and can pass things between if we need. Their SLA is pretty good. It's usually during tax season, even when we're getting heavy levels of comments, one day is really what we're trying to get to. And understandably, our focus is going to be on resolving issues first. And that's always going to be the priority. Someone's locked out an account. What do I do? We're going to help someone like that first before we're going to help. There's a priority system to how we handle from a customer service standpoint.
Do you have specific tools for brand sentiment, or is that all within like your content calendar tool does that as well? Like what does your tool stack look like?
Yeah, so right now that tool stack for customer service, social media response, publishing, reporting, social listening, sentiment, a lot of that all falls under Khoros is who we're using. And that includes pretty much all of the data that we need in terms of understanding sentiment, understanding competitive set, what people are saying about us, all of the above.
And that's Khoros?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I love hearing about new tools. I haven't heard that one before. And that's not scheduling, that's just more for the sentiment? Both. Nice. Amazing.
Khoros used to be called Spreadfast.
Okay.
I don't know if that rings any bells. But
yeah, that definitely sounds more familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. How did you go through the process of deciding on that tool? Because I've tried so many content calendar tools. I've created 1,000 different content calendars. Like I have a Google Sheet now that I use for all of our blog content calendars because tools just weren't doing it as much as I tried to manipulate them into what we need. So how'd you land on that one?
Yeah, I think when we were evaluating that, this is probably like 3-4 years ago now that we've been with them, we're really looking at tools that can do from A to Z, that we're not having to parse out different parts of the tool, right? There are tools that just do calendars. There's tools that just do reporting. We have found a really big benefit by keeping it all under one roof because, like I said, we're able to cross-reference the content and the care side of it. So I can build a report out that shows me top performing content. And in the same report, I wouldn't do this, but I could if I wanted to, combine what pieces of content garnered the most negative sentiment comments, right? Like I can like cross-reference the data sets from our customer service and our marketing side of the tool. And then same with our social listening, we can pull in some of the data from our own channels, but it's also going to be reaching out and getting information about, like I said, competitive sets, industry, other keywords that we've set up.
That's really interesting to be able to identify what pieces of content are getting the most negative sentiments and to then use that information to dictate, okay, avoid this kind of, whether it was the imagery or the copy, like it at least gives you a pattern. Like with SEO, there's so many patterns that are a lot easier to see with the data. But with social, I think you really have to dive in and read the comments. Like what was the level of negativity? Did they just not understand it or are they really mad about it?
Right. And I think too, like it's that added layer to the analysis with a lot of the content, because I'll say one of the things, one of the sort of content types that we've tried out a bit more this year, specifically on Facebook, organic only, is these like text posts. So no image, there's no additional copy. It's just, and it's a style Facebook promotes, but it's text on a solid color. That's that. It is unbelievable, the response we have seen from posts like this. If your cat got your refund, what would they spend it on? Hundreds of comments. And
really?
It's crazy. But what's been interesting is that we've actually now had to give our customer service team a heads up when those are coming, because we know, we have learned that those are going to garner a large volume of comments, but that almost all those comments are not customer service, right? Those don't require a response. Maybe or a positive reinforcement from the brand, but those aren't like red alert, this person needs help. And so we had to get in the pattern of saying, hey, something coming this week, just so you know, you kind of can disregard these 300 comments that are going to come in all in the same day.
Yeah, it's not going to be a red flag situation, most likely.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's the text on, I can't remember what Facebook calls this, but it's just the text and you can change the background. Like it could be tie-dye, it could be the black or the white. Okay, so it comes across as, in terms of content medium for Facebook, it's just text. So the algorithm shows that more versus image.
We know when the platforms introduce a new anything, they're going to push it heavier. So your benefit to play into it. And I think there's other brands who've done this too. We're not the only one who's ever tried that. But
certainly,
it's definitely been surprising to me how much response, but also just like how positive it was. That we're asking a question, people are literally answering the question. Whereas you could easily see a situation where we're trying to push a product saying, hey, go check this out with a link. But that's not going to garner much engagement. And if it does, it's probably going to be like, get out of my feed or
totally
problem I'm having. So it's been a nice way to offset any negative that we are going to get and add in some positive sentiment in the mix.
Yeah, and also gives you an opportunity to really humanize the brand and have that playful fun aspect, which when it comes to content, you're either doing something informative, entertaining, or you're selling. And no one wants the selling content unless it's some like great coupon or discount code or something for free. Then they're like, oh, now I'm interested and going to jump in this bucket.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're planning out your content calendar, are you scheduling the same amount of content per channel, or do you have specific requirements? Facebook will have X amount of posts a week, whereas TikTok will have half that amount, or what does that usually look like?
Yeah, they are different. And we've played with that certainly since I've been at Block, just to, understand what's the right amount and what's the right frequency on all the different channels. I would say generally we post the most on TikTok, and then followed by probably like Threads/Twitter when it was Twitter, and then Instagram, and then Facebook. So
really,
it is very different. And we've also made a concerted effort in the last year plus to really try and make unique content for each platform. I think most content marketers know that is the right thing to do, but it's hard to do that. And
so
not everybody has the resources to do that.
No.
I'll be the first to acknowledge it takes more resource to do that. Whether that is an in-house team, an agency, whatever your source is for your content, you're going to need more of it. If you're trying to say, I want one thing for TikTok, one thing for Instagram, one thing for Facebook, one thing for Threads. Now, sometimes it's the same theme or it's the same concept, but it is literal different assets. So even still, it's going to take more time than if you were just to say, back in the day when we used to say, oh, same image, Facebook, Instagram, just plop it everywhere and call it good. Times have definitely changed in that regard. But I like that because the more we differentiate our channels, the more we're learning about what works and what is tracking with our audiences. Something that kind of like hits on TikTok, we may do it another 3 or 4 times to solidify, hey, this is a thing, or like people are latching onto this before we bring it over to Facebook.
Smart. So you're able to test it.
And we know which platforms are better for testing and which platforms we need to keep a little bit more like in their sandbox.
Yeah, because something like TikTok, you're going to have probably a better reach and get more data a lot quicker than Facebook's algorithm that's desperately we're trying to reach people. But it's really hard to create so many different types of content and even coming up with different topic ideas per platform. If you at least have the same message but change the box that it's in for every single social media platform, then that's at least reasonable. But for those smaller person content teams, like it is so difficult to come up with 5 different ideas for 3 days out of the week, every week. It's not always realistic. So if you have the resources to do it, you're right. It really is the best for the platforms and the users.
Exactly.
As we wrap up, I definitely want to dive into what your secret sauce is. So what is your current strategy, tool, a resource, maybe something that you just recently learned that you'd love to share?
Yeah. I'll give maybe a little bit 2 different answers. So my secret sauce of late, I feel like in the last 6 months, I have been just saving content like crazy. And I'm the person who uses the TikTok saved and then the folders, I think they call collections.
Yeah.
So I have one for work. I've got one for books I want to read, all kinds of things. But I use it. I really go back to those and go back and drag. I was joking with someone the other day that TikTok needs I'm on TikTok for work right now, toggle. As opposed to I'm on TikTok to just read content or watch content.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it is hard to be saying to yourself, I'm looking for what is the latest trend, or I'm looking for how other brands have handled this. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, oh my God, where have I been? So that's my invention that I've not made yet. Thing I recently learned, which I feel like I need to show you, and knowing it's a podcast may be hard to explain. I learned it from a TikTok. But for people who are taking a lot of content on their phone, whether for work, for personal.
Okay.
When you're taking a picture, if you hold down the white button as you're taking a picture and slide it to the left, you'll see a number and a line, and that number is going to go up the further you drag it. So if you drag it just a little, it'll say 3. If you drag it all the way, it'll say 40. It will take that many pictures in that moment. And yes, and I was like, what? And so if you're somebody who is taking a lot of photos and you want to have a lot of choices to look through, again, personal or for work, my mind was blown. And I was like, I need to try this immediately. And it worked. So something I learned recently was a trick for taking photos on your iPhone that could be used for work or personal. Basically, when you're taking a photo, you're holding down the white button and you pull it out to the left, you'll see a little line and it'll show you a number. And the further out you pull it, the higher the number gets. So if it says 3, or you can pull it more to say 20. And when you let go, it will take that many pictures all at the same time. So kind of like burst mode, but a little bit more specific, and great for if you want to have lots of options to choose from. So I thought that was a very nifty trick, and I did not know that before. So that's my trick of the moment that I've recently learned.
I love it. I love that you can like choose how many photos too, because especially if you want to do like a little bit of a pano and move with it too, you can do like a few different ones. Or if you have someone taking a photo of you, you get options and you can move around. Like, love that. That's a really great tip.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everything that you shared today. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.